My cousin kept dropping her kids off without asking, so I installed a Ring doorbell and started ignoring the door. She texted me, "Why aren't you answering?" I replied, "Because you didn't ask first." I thought that would be the end of it until her son called me, scared and alone, saying their mom never came back. For context, I'm 41 and live just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a single mom with 2 kids, aged 12 and 9. My life is busy but manageable. Or, at least it was before my cousin Lila decided I was her on-demand babysitter. Lila is my mom's sister's daughter, and we were pretty close growing up. But while I grew up, got a stable job, and focused on raising my kids, Lila jumped from one chaotic situation to the next. She had 3 kids with her ex, a guy who was more interested in beer and video games than being a dad. After they split up, she moved back to our hometown, and that's when my life started getting a lot more complicated. At first, I didn't mind helping her out. She was struggling, and I understood being a single mom is hard. She'd asked me to watch the kids, so she could go to job interviews, and I said yes. She'd come over for dinner sometimes, and I'd send her home with leftovers. But then, the emergencies became more frequent, and soon, they weren't really emergencies anymore. It started innocently enough. She'd text me early in the morning, "Hey, I have a doctor's appointment. Can you watch the kids for an hour?" I'd say yes, no big deal. Then, it turned into last-minute texts about errands she needed to run, but she wouldn't come back for hours. One time, she dropped them off just for a little bit and didn't return until 9 p.m. I had to feed them, bathe them, and put them to bed. Even my own kids started asking, "Why are they always here?" I should have set boundaries earlier, but I kept letting it slide. I told myself she was struggling, that she just needed time to get back on her feet. But deep down, I knew the truth. She wasn't trying to fix her life. She was dumping her responsibilities on me because it was easier than dealing with them herself. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon in April. I had just come home from work, exhausted. My boss had been on my case all day, and I had a massive headache. My kids were sitting at the kitchen table doing their homework, and I was finally taking a minute to breathe. I had a cup of coffee in my hand, and was about to sit down when the doorbell rang. It was Lila. She was standing there with her toddler on her hip, and the other 2 kids were already running wild in my front yard. She looked at me and said, "I have a thing I need to do. I'll be back in a couple of hours." That was it. No explanation. No asking if I was busy. Just, "I have a thing." I stood there, stunned. Before I could say anything, she handed me the toddler and turned around, heading back to her car. I called after her, but she didn't stop. She just waved over her shoulder like this was completely normal. Her kids ran past me into the house, and I just stood there in disbelief. My coffee went cold while I tried to process what had just happened. That night, after managing 5 kids for hours, I sat down at my computer. I was angry, not just at her, but at myself. How had I let it get this far? I had my own kids to take care of, my own life. Why was I letting her treat me like a doormat? I started reading articles about boundaries. I ended up on Reddit, scrolling through posts about toxic family members, and one comment stuck with me. "You have to stop saying yes. If you don't, they'll keep taking advantage of you." That's when I decided enough was enough. The next morning, I ordered a Ring doorbell. It arrived 2 days later, and I installed it that weekend. I didn't tell Lila about it. I wanted to see how long it would take her to show up unannounced again. It didn't take long. The first time Lila showed up after I installed the Ring doorbell was the following Tuesday. It was just after 5 p.m., and I was still in my work clothes, trying to get dinner ready while my kids bickered over the last bag of chips. The doorbell chimed, and my phone lit up with a Ring notification. I opened the app, and there she was standing at my front door. She wasn't alone. Her 3 kids were with her, one of them holding a plastic grocery bag stuffed with clothes. I didn't answer the door. I didn't even move. I just watched as she knocked, then knocked again, harder this time. "Hey, I know you're home," she yelled, leaning in as if trying to see through the door. "Your car is in the driveway." She knocked again, and one of her kids whined, "Mom, I'm hungry." My phone buzzed. It was a text from her. "Why aren't you answering? I can see your living room light on." I didn't reply. Instead, I muted my phone, walked back into the kitchen, and stirred the spaghetti sauce like nothing was happening. My heart was pounding, though. I wasn't used to ignoring people, especially family. But I was determined to stand my ground. Lila stayed on the porch for a good 10 minutes, pacing back and forth. She tried calling me, but I let it go to voicemail. Finally, she stomped back to her car, yelling at her kids to get in the damn car. I felt a small flicker of guilt, but I pushed it down. That night, she sent me a string of texts. What the hell, Rachel? Why didn't you answer? I needed you to watch the kids for a couple of hours. It's not a big deal. Are you mad at me or something? I'm your cousin. You're supposed to help family. I didn't respond. The next morning, she called me while I was at work. I let it ring out, and she left a voicemail that was half angry, half fake sweet. She said she just needed to talk and that I was being really dramatic. Then she added, "If you're mad, just say so. Don't play these games." When I didn't reply, she escalated. She called my mom. I should have seen that coming. My mom has always had a soft spot for Lila, and when Lila spun her version of events, my mom called me, upset. "Rachel, why didn't you answer the door?" Lila said she was in a tough spot yesterday. You know how hard things are for her. "I know, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But Lila doesn't ask for help. She just shows up and expects me to drop everything. She's family, my mom said, as if that explained everything. Exactly. And because she's family, she should respect me enough to ask instead of treating me like a free babysitter. I can't keep doing this, Mom. My mom sighed, and I could tell she didn't agree with me. But for once, I didn't back down. A few days passed, and I thought maybe Lila had gotten the hint. I was wrong. The following Saturday, she showed up again. This time, she rang the bell and knocked at the same time, like she was trying to force me to open the door. I pulled up the Ring app on my phone and saw her standing there, arms crossed, while her kids climbed all over my porch. When I didn't answer, she stepped back and started yelling. "Rachel, I know you're in there. You can't just ignore me like this. I'm your cousin. Open the door." My phone buzzed again. Another text. "This is ridiculous. I need you to take the kids for a few hours. I'll explain later." I didn't reply. After 15 minutes, she finally left. I thought that was the end of it. But later that evening, I got one last text. "If you're not going to help me, I'll find someone who will. Don't expect me to be there for you when you need something." I stared at the message. She wasn't just mad that I said no. She was trying to guilt me into caving. But I didn't cave. I spent the night staring at my phone screen, rereading that message filled with arrogance and manipulation. Did she really think I was the one in the wrong? That it was my duty to keep letting her exploit me? And worse, she didn't care about her own kids. She only cared about the inconvenience of having to find someone else to parent for her. Then, a question hit me. Where were these kids going when I didn't open the door? It wasn't an unfounded thought. If Lila was so used to just dumping her kids on me without asking, what was she doing when I wasn't available? Was she leaving them alone? Handing them off to just anyone? My stomach turned. And what if that boy hadn't called me? He was scared, alone, because his mother simply never came back. She had left them somewhere and didn't even bother to check in. I stewed over this for days. I didn't want to believe my cousin was that irresponsible, but the truth was undeniable. She wasn't a mother. She was just a woman who had kids and saw them as a burden. I needed to do something. But I couldn't just take on a responsibility that wasn't mine. My life was already hard enough with my own kids. I was exhausted. So exhausted. So I did what needed to be done. The following week, I called Child Protective Services. I laid out everything. I told them a single mother was constantly abandoning her kids, leaving them without supervision, without a plan, without even making sure they were safe. I explained how, when I stopped taking them in, one of them called me, terrified because their mother never came back. They listened carefully. They asked for details, how old the kids were, how often this happened, whether I had any proof. I mentioned the Ring doorbell, the footage of Lila banging on my door, yelling, trying to force her way in. I told them about the text messages and calls. The agent was silent for a moment, then said, "This is serious. We're going to investigate." And they did. Within a week, Lila got an unexpected visit. They showed up at her house, asked about the kids' daily routine, asked her direct questions about where they spent their time, who they stayed with. Of course, Lila lied. Of course, she tried to make everything seem fine. But the problem was, she wasn't smart enough to cover her tracks. The kids were dirty. The house was a mess. When they asked about school, they found out the kids had missed multiple days without any explanation. And when they pressed further, one of the kids told the truth. They said that sometimes their mom left, and they were alone, that they got hungry, that they had slept on strangers' couches. That was enough for CPS to take immediate action. When Lila realized things were spiraling out of control, she panicked. She called my mom, crying, screaming, saying someone was trying to ruin her life, and my mother, as always, believed her. I got the call in the middle of the afternoon. Rachel, what did you do? My mother's voice was full of fury. How could you do this to your cousin? I did what was right, Mom. Right? She laughed bitterly. You reported Lila to CPS. Now, they're taking her kids away. And you think that's unfair? I said, struggling to contain my anger. You think it's okay for a mother to abandon her kids? To leave them with whoever? To let them go hungry and be unsafe? She was silent for a moment. She was struggling. Struggling doesn't justify neglect. She's family. So are the kids. I yelled, unable to hold back anymore. What if something had happened to them? What if one of them got hurt? If someone had done something to them, would you be willing to live with that guilt? Because I'm not. I tried to help her. I did everything I could, but Lila never wanted to change. She just wanted to dump her responsibilities on me. My mother started crying, but for the first time I didn't care, because I was right. The last thing I heard before hanging up was my mother, through her sobs. You destroyed our family, but I knew the truth. I didn't destroy anything. I just refused to keep pretending everything was fine. The next day, Lila texted me. I hate you. I'll never forgive you for this. You ruined my life. I stared at her words for a moment, then finally replied, No. You ruined your own life. And then I blocked her number. I later found out the kids were placed in temporary care. CPS tried to contact their father, but he had no interest in taking them. He was just as useless as Lila. Eventually, they found a good foster family for the children. Lila? Well, she spent some time fighting in court, trying to get them back, but it didn't last long. With no stable job, no proper home, and no proof that she could care for them, she lost the case quickly. Last I heard, she moved to another city with a new boyfriend. She never reached out to me again. My mother didn't speak to me for months. When she finally did, she was still resentful, but she never brought up what happened. Deep down, I think she knew I had been right but didn't want to admit it. And me? I moved on. Was it cruel? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely. The days that followed were pure chaos. After Lila lost custody of her kids, the news spread through the family like wildfire, and as I had expected, I became the villain of the story. The phone calls started almost immediately. First, it was my mother, but since I had already heard her once, I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then came the aunts, uncles, even distant cousins who never talked to me suddenly decided they had an opinion. How could you do this, Rachel? She's your cousin, your family. You destroyed her life. And every single one of those messages only made me more certain that I had done the only right thing. But the worst was yet to come. Lila wasn't the type to accept defeat silently. Since she had never been one to take responsibility for anything, she did what she did best. She turned me into the enemy. She started telling everyone that I had always been jealous of her, that I had done this out of spite, that I had reported her because I was a bitter person who couldn't stand to see others happy. One day, an aunt of mine, the same one who never even bothered to send me a birthday message, called me furious. You selfish witch. You got what you wanted. You made Lila lose everything. I hope you're happy. Funny how no one seemed to care that she had lost her kids long before this, that those boys had been neglected for years, and that all I did was finally stop pretending nothing was happening. No one wanted to acknowledge the truth because doing so would mean admitting that I wasn't the one who failed Lila, her own family did. And then the threats started. At first, they were just indirect jabs. Passive-aggressive comments on social media, anonymous hateful messages. But then things started escalating. One morning, I went outside to leave for work and found my trash cans knocked over, bags ripped open, garbage scattered all over my yard. Days later, someone egged my door. I knew exactly who was behind it. Lila may be lazy and irresponsible, but when it comes to manipulating people, she's a genius. She must have played the victim, cried, screamed to anyone who would listen that her evil cousin ruined her life, that she had nothing left, that she was a poor, unjustly treated mother. And then came the family members ready to avenge her. One day, I was at the grocery store and saw a group of relatives on the other side of the aisle. As soon as they spotted me, the looks of disgust were immediate. One of them, a cousin I barely knew, grabbed her phone and must have texted Lila because minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a message from her. I hope you're satisfied. But remember this. One day, you'll need help too. And when that day comes, no one will be there for you. I could feel the poison dripping from those words.
But you know what was the most shocking?
I felt nothing. Because in that moment, I realized that I had never had anyone to rely on in the first place. When I needed help, no one was there for me. When I was raising my kids alone, juggling work and motherhood, not a single family member showed up to offer help. But when Lila, the freeloading disaster, finally had to face the consequences of her own actions, suddenly, everyone rallied to defend her. That's when I decided to cut ties for good. I blocked every single person who had sent me hateful messages. I unfollowed family members on social media. I wasn't going to waste another second trying to justify myself to people who only saw what they wanted to see. My mother tried to reach out a few times, but the conversations were always the same. She never said I was right, never acknowledged that Lila was a mess who put her own children in danger. The only thing she ever said was, "You should have handled it differently." Differently? I had spent years putting up with this. Years letting Lila use me, treating me like free childcare, dumping her kids on me whenever she pleased. How many more chances was I supposed to give? How many more times was I supposed to stay silent? The most ridiculous part of all this is that if I had reported a stranger for child neglect, I would have been praised. But because it was a cousin? Because it was family? Suddenly, the crime disappears and becomes just a mistake. Well, I don't play that game. And when things finally settled, when the hateful messages stopped and the passive-aggressive attacks faded away, I sat alone in my living room and let everything sink in. I didn't regret a damn thing. I thought about the kids, but I also thought about myself. For the first time, I did something for me, for my peace, for my sanity. I am not anyone's babysitter. I am not the solution to anyone's problems. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do exactly the same thing.